My guest today is Ben Little. Ben operates the number one Zaxby franchise in the US. The company has 14 locations with 800 plus employees doing over 50 million in revenue. On top of that, he owns a line of Sweathouse franchises, which is a contract therapy studio improving physical performance and wellness. This includes infrared saunas and cold plunge. Thanks a lot for coming to the Old Co-Builders podcast, Ben.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to be here.
You started this journey almost 2 decades ago, even though you're still very young, but 20 years ago. So there are thousands of different ways how to make money, how to make a living. Why franchising? And tell us maybe the story, how you got started and how was the first few years.
I guess starting with why franchising, for me, I'm a pretty simple guy, and I figured out pretty early in life what I'm good at and what I'm not good at, and I think that's really the appeal of franchising, at least for me, is that at my core, I'm an operator, and that's the strength of what I do, and it's what I'm passionate about, and it's what I'm good at. And I think the appeal in franchising is that, granted, if you're in the right system, you have a partner that can kind of supplement the things that you're either not interested in or you're not good at. So, to use Zaxby as an example, like I have no interest in like trying to put together my own IT infrastructure. Like I don't want to mess around with like how to structure the POS and how to structure the kitchen display system and firewalls and all of those things. Like it just makes my head hurt thinking about it. I don't want to negotiate chicken contracts and deal with the supply chain. Marketing sometimes holds my attention, but generally is not something that I'm terribly passionate about. Um, so again, granted, if you're in the right system, then I can take my strengths, and then hopefully the franchisor can supplement the things that either I'm not interested in or I want someone else to do or handle for me, so that way I can maximize what I'm good at. So for me, that's the appeal in franchising. My super long story reduced into a very short version of the story of how I got into Zaxby's and then Sweathouses. So when I graduated college, I actually was a futures and commodities trader, and I did that for several years. And my dad and my other partner were already in the Zaxby system. They had 5 locations at the time, and I resisted getting into the business for a while, and just again, super long story short, I told them, I wasn't really interested in doing it unless I could kind of create my own legacy in the business, and the opportunity came along for me to do that. So that is what initially got me into at least the Zaxby system. And I guess to kind of backpedal a little bit of going into the dynamics of family and working with family. Again, like I said, my dad is still my partner today. I've been trying to buy him and my other partner out for going on 2 years, and we can get into that later if you want to. But it's been one of the things that I'm so eternally grateful for now. When I first started this kind of partnership, so to speak, with him, I had a lot of reservations about it, and so we kind of both sat down and agreed that, hey, we're going to do this together now. We had like this full day conference, and we went through every little thing of how, or what the expectations are of you, what the expectations are of me. What does it look like if one of us stops having fun and wants to get out? What does it look like for me to be successful? What does it look like for you to be happy that I'm in the business now? And all of these little details. And I think that's where a lot of people screw up when they get into the family business, is they don't have that conversation on the front end of what does success look like. And if I get into this in a year from now, I absolutely hate it. How do I not how do we not ruin the father-son relationship, which, we both agreed on the front end, there's no amount of money that was worth us ruining our father-son relationship over. And so, just kind of like you would with any other business partner, when you're going through and, crafting an operating agreement together, you kind of want to go straight to that worst case scenario and then kind of work backwards from there. And if you can do that, and I mean, it's awkward and it's uncomfortable, but it can save you so much heartache on the back end if you kind of start at the worst case scenario and then work forwards from there. And that's what we did. And I mean, luckily we've never had to really cross any of those worst case scenario bridges. I mean, yes, we certainly butted heads from time to time and had our disagreements, but it's always been, in the spirit of trying to push the business forward and keep trying to get better and, trying to stay at the top of the mountain.
And did you leave cold turkey, the trading job, before going all in with the business with your father and his friend?
It's funny because when I first committed to getting into Zaxby's, I always envisioned that I would go back to trading full time eventually, because at the time I was trying to automate a bunch of my strategies, and I always just envisioned like it would just kind of run on its own at that point, and I'd get the Zaxby's thing going and kind of build my part of the business there, and then eventually I'd go back to trading full time. And that never really quite transpired, but I still do it, and I'm actively engaged in it from time to time, but it's certainly not a full-time job anymore. I just like to do it when the volatility gets good, and I see some outsized opportunities, but no, definitely don't do that full-time anymore.
And where were the business when you so-called entered the conversation?
So we had 5 locations at the time when I came in. And again, the way this worked was, when I was having that conversation on the front end with my dad and other partner, they were like, it's fine. We'd love to have you. We think you'd be a great addition, but, you're not just going to start out being a partner. And so what I had to do was I had to go train with another franchisee for a full year and work literally as a cook and a cashier and a system manager and a GM, and literally start at the very bottom and work my way up just like everyone else. And then, progressed to just, I was just a single store operating partner. We have a model very similar to what Chick-fil-A does, where every store has a operating partner that gets a salary plus 25% of the net operating profits, is how we've built our Zaxby's business. And, so I did that. And, now I'm the CEO of our existing group of Zaxby's. And like I said, still working on trying to buy Dad another partner out right now.
So when it comes to the partnership, you've been in this business for a long time. And when I was doing some research, you were talking about your 2 partners, and they're experts in real estate. They will tell you what is a good location, what is a bad location, and which is the right city. So when it comes to this partnership of you 3, what's your strengths, what's your weaknesses, and what's theirs?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the blessings of having both of them as my partners is, my other partner, he had already had an unbelievably successful business in senior HUD housing and has properties literally all over the United States. So, real estate expertise off the charts, banking expertise off the charts, like just me getting to sit in those banking meetings with them and just be a sponge, has been worth its weight in gold over the years, and just getting to learn how they deal and interact with the bankers, how they structure the deals, how they negotiate leverage with them, to just all of these little things that you really, you can't watch a master class on the internet and really comprehend how a lot of that stuff works in the real world. So it's been a blessing just to learn from them, and like still to this day, me and Dad just ride around, just aimlessly some days, just looking at real estate. And, that's how we've come across a lot of our sites, the last 10 years or so. So, I mean, we'll literally just drive by a site like, that looks pretty good. Let's do some digging on it.
Uh-huh.
And to specifically answer the question of how do we select the sites, there's both an art and a science to it, and at least in our type of business that obviously is a physical brick and mortar business, QSR, so quick service restaurant. The physical location piece is, if it's not the most important, it's pretty dang close. I don't care how good your operations are. If the site sucks, then there's only so much you can do to overcome that. Um, one of my other mentors in the business told me something a long time ago that it just lives rent free in the back of my head. But he said, Ben, you can either pay for a location once or you can pay for it every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And, what he meant by that was, if you have a good site and you select a good site, even if you have to pay more for it up front, that is the far superior option than going for, the B minus site that maybe is a little less money, but it's going to cost you top line revenue every single day. And that's what he meant by you can either pay for it once or you can pay for it every single day. And so I always have that in the back of my mind when we're out riding and looking at different sites. And there's a ton of nuance in there, and some of it is just learned through osmosis and experience. But at least in my genre, there's a bunch of things that I immediately look for. So does it have good ingress egress? I mean, that's kind of like number one. If it's got bad ingress egress, it's almost just an automatic pass. There's a lot of things that like use a coffee shop, for example. You want a coffee shop to be on the going to work side because that's when people generally drink the most coffee. You don't want it on the going home side because people, not always, but generally don't
Mm-hmm.
want coffee on their way back home. Like little distinctions like that I see people screw up all the time. So, like for me, we're a lunch and dinner business, so I always want to be on the going home side because I want a dinner restaurant. I don't want a lunch restaurant. I want a dinner restaurant because lunch is generally 1 hour for us Americans. It's usually some 12 to 1, 11:30 to 12:30, whatever it may be. But if you're a lunch restaurant, you only have this very tight window to maximize your top line revenue if you're a lunch store. If you're a dinner restaurant, dinner can span, from 4:30 all the way to sometimes 9, 9:30, 10 p.m. So instead of trying to maximize all your sales in this 1 hour window, now I've got a 4, maybe even 5 hour window to do that same hourly volume, which is why you want a dinner store in my business. You want a drive-through store, which, post-COVID, it seems like they're all drive-through now, but you want a drive-through store, not a dine-in store. You want rooftops versus commercial, which again kind of goes back to dinner versus a lunch store. You want good visibility. You want your building to be its own kind of billboard. You need enough parking. You need to understand what is going to be your limiting factor, whether it's parking, how many cars you can get through the drive-through. In my case, how many chicken tenders can I cook per hour? One of those things is eventually going to cap me out on a per hour basis. And, when it comes to the site selection, I don't want it to be either that parking piece or the drive-through queuing piece. So there's all of these little kind of things that go in there that, if you're doing it for the first time, is so easy to screw up, but you can learn very quickly through your own mistakes and through your own pain that you self-inflict.
So going back to the story of you having this year-on practice, going back to level 1, like learning all the skills and how the business works and all that. So once the training was over, you went back, and what did you do on the first or second year when you actually started working in the business with your new partners?
I would say that there was, especially that first year when I was training, I'm not going to sit here and tell you like I really enjoyed it because I really didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty humbling to go, from doing something where I'm already independently successful to like literally starting at the bottom. Um, but I'm so eternally grateful for that time and
Mm-hmm.
experience now because I don't know if I could have ever reached kind of my operational capacity, if you will, if I didn't really understand all those little nuances of what the team members have to do and go through each and every day and what the managers have to go through each and every day, and really starting from the absolute bottom and learning each of those pieces in sequence. Um, there was plenty of days where I just, I already lost most of my hair, but my hair was falling out at an even rapider rate at that time. But again, I'm very grateful for that time and experience now. It's almost like going through basic training in the army or in the military or whatever. But if you don't learn those foundational pieces, I think it makes business ownership in your specific genre so much more difficult. Can you do it? Sure. Can you still be successful? Sure. There's plenty of people that skip that step, but for me personally, I don't know if we would have been as successful as we are had I skipped that step. Um, so now, what my day today looks like is I unfortunately don't get to spend as much time in the restaurants as I used to, just from the nature of having 14 of them now and obviously expanding into another brand. So, I'm kind of I'm in kind of this, I wouldn't call it a no man's land, but, I'm kind of in this in-betweener role right now to where, I still oversee all the operations of both businesses, but I'm just about to the point to where I'm going to need to bring in either kind of a director of operations or a vice president or something like that. Just because, again, the way that we set our business up, again, in the Chick-fil-A model, my operating partners largely run the day-to-day operations of all of our units. So hopefully, a lot of that stuff doesn't ever come up to me, but invariably there's still times where I have to get involved with it. I almost view my role now as kind of a chief psychologist almost. 'Cause, I have 10 operating partners. They're at the end of the day, they're all humans
Mm-hmm.
and they all have different strengths. They all have different weaknesses. And so, I almost view it as my biggest role and responsibility is to figure out how to maximize their strengths, B, how to supplement their weaknesses, and then C, figure out what is going to motivate them to be the best versions of themselves that they can be, and that's different for each and every one of them, and that's one of the hardest parts of what I do is trying to kind of curtail development plans for individual human beings that can be like completely different people and can have completely different things that they're good at and completely different things that they like to do and don't like to do. And that's why I've tweeted about this several times, but I think I've said I have 14 different restaurants that run 14 different ways, even though it's in a franchise model, and you would think it's just this cookie cutter thing that they all just run the exact same. That couldn't be further from the truth, because again, it goes back to that human piece of they're all unique individuals.
You've said, when it comes to leadership and people management, you've said people don't quit jobs, they quit managers. How do you ensure your managers lead effectively? And maybe a even more important question, how do you make sure you are a good leader?
I don't really subscribe to a lot of what I would call business bullshit. Like when you go to your seminar, you see there's no shortage of business influencers on Twitter and
Mm-hmm.
Instagram and TikTok now, but there is two pieces of business bullshit that I do subscribe to, and both of which came from Tony Robbins, and there's really just one overarching one. But it really just all comes back to standards. You know, I will never forget this. You know, and I think everyone kind of my age went through this little Tony Robbins phase, you know, before
You should.
business influencing was the cool thing to do. But yeah, I will never forget the first time I heard Tony Robbins talk about standards. And I mean, it cut me so deep the first time I heard it that it is something else that has just lived rent free in the back of my head ever since the first time I heard it. But, you know, he basically what he says is if you're not happy with something, raise your standards. You're not happy with this thing because your standards are low enough to allow for that result. You know, to like use a simple example. Let's say you weigh 220 pounds, but you really want to weigh 180 pounds. Well, your standard of fitness and weight loss and diet is allowing you to live the lifestyle to weigh 220 pounds instead of the 180 pounds that you really want to be. You know, like when you sit there and like really let that resonate for a little bit, like that cuts really deep because all of the ownership comes back to you. And if you're unhappy with something, it's
Right.
because you're literally allowing it to happen. So to use an example, in my Zaxby's business, you know, we use drive-through timers in the drive-through. So, you know, each car we only want, you know, I'm just going to use a simple example, say 60 seconds per car at the window. So when a car pulls up to the window, we want that car moving within 60 seconds for the next car to pull up. So a good example of the standard for me is that if our standard is 60 seconds and I get a report tomorrow morning and it says that we were at a minute and 1 second, you know, a lot of people say, well, you know, that was pretty good. You know, we're only 1 second off. You know, it's okay. Just do a little better next time. Yeah, with me and our group, the reaction is, what the fuck happened? Our
Mm-hmm.
standard is 1 minute. It's not 1 minute and 1 second. It's 1 minute. What happened? Why was the time 1 minute and 1 second? And that trickles down to everything else in the business. If you do not set the standard as a leader and you enforce it ruthlessly, then it is such a slippery slope to everything else in business and life. And you know, like again, it sounds so stupid and simple when to say, you know, if you're unhappy with something, just raise your standards. But again, if you sit there like really think about that and let it marinate for a little while, and you start applying it to different parts of you know your personal and business life, then it really is like a paradigm shift. And then the second piece of that, the second piece of the business bullshit that I subscribe to is that change is not like this big, long, drawn out thing. Like a lot of people think change is, you know, if I'm here and I want to get to here, if I'm unhappy with this thing and I want to get to the here, that it's this, you know, huge, long, drawn out, slow process. Change happens in an instant. Like it happens literally in the blink of an eye. You know, like to, again, to use another crazy example, if you're an alcoholic and you're unhappy with being an alcoholic and you're sick and tired of it and you finally decide, all right, I'm done, I'm going to get sober, you know, let's go. You know, the process from being an alcoholic to being sober wasn't like this years of process. Like it may build up for years, but the change from going from alcoholic to sober happens in 1 second, like literally a blink of an eye. And so when we look at making changes in the business and again, whether it's your personal life or, you know, for anything in entrepreneurship, like change happens like that. And that again goes back to leadership and just, you know, not tolerating long drawn out slow change. Like if we're making the change, we're doing it today, damn it. And it's not waiting till tomorrow or the next day or the next day. It happens right now. And that's the end of
Okay. So when it comes to hiring those
it.
operating partners, these are your key people. Obviously, all the 800 people are key people, but these are, I guess, you talk to most often, and what the message will be for them, from them it goes down to other people. So how do you find those best operators, because you operate the number one franchise in the US. You're doing extremely well. We'll share some numbers very soon on how you've been able to grow those each locations. You're doing like extremely well. So how do we find those people? And how do we find those people?
The hardest is finding the first one. Because past our first one, everything has just been internal from that point forward. So, it's been kind of a fun challenge doing this in Sweat House now, because, in essence, starting from scratch and having to find that first one again. So the first one's the hardest. We could do like a whole separate podcast just on this topic, but there's a list of things I could say that are kind of qualities that I want to see in this person, but it really all starts with, you got to be a capitalist, like first and foremost. Like if you're not a capitalist, and if I don't want money to be like the number one motivation.
You've even
but
said
it has to be in there somewhere, because if you're not motivated by financial success at some level, you're just not going to be successful in entrepreneurship in general.
You've even
But
said
that being said, it can't
it has
be.
to be. You've
Yeah,
said
it
it has
can't
to
be
be.
the one and only thing that motivates you, because, I mean, A, that's a pretty shallow pursuit, and B, you will find that once you reach a certain amount of, net worth or liquidity or whatever, not that it's diminishing returns per se, but, it stops filling that bucket up. And so you have to figure out, what is the real reason why you're doing it? What is the real reason why, you want to go from 1 to 14 locations? Why do you want to go to a new brand? Why do you want to do all these other things? And, I mean, for me, it's pretty personal. And, I would say my unique chip on my shoulder, funny enough, ties back to my dad. And, when I first got into the business, regardless of whether my current operating partners would admit it or not now, not all of them were rooting for my success. And, I had plenty of other people on the outside that, just thought I was just this, idiot silver spoon kid that had no idea what he was doing. And so, my chip on my shoulder still today is, I want to prove all those people wrong, and, not only show that I was capable of it and I'm still capable of it, but I could do it better than them. And that's what still drives me to this day. And, I mean, I've told this story before, but, I mean, there was times when I was just solo unit operator, just, working open to close every day. And I mean, I mean, again, it sounds crazy when I say this out loud, but like, I was literally willing to die in that kitchen to prove to people that I can do it. Like, I was willing to drop dead of exhaustion, and that just be the end of it, just to prove to everyone that I was better than what I could do it better than them, and that I was capable of it. Which is so funny when you think about it, because like that, my chip on my shoulder means absolutely nothing to anyone else besides me. Like, no one else gives a shit about that. But I care a shit ton about it, because that was what was driving me and motivating me. And that's what is still motivating me to this day. And, I mean, but whether I wanted to admit it at the time or not, that's part of the reason why I got into Sweat House, was, again, just to prove once and for all, like, I'm not a one-trick pony. I can do this on my own. I am fully capable of expanding into this other thing. And so, yeah, I mean, that's that's again, goes back to that human piece of, we're all different. And, if you can tap into someone's why, and you can tap into someone's chip on their shoulder, it can be such a great tool to kind of curtail their development and to get the most out of someone.
Where does this drive come from? Because I think you can't teach that. Like, I'm getting this example a bit in my own life. For example, this simple podcast. 80% of my guests
Jeez.
are from US,
Nice.
so that means I have sometimes 8, sometimes 10, sometimes 12-hour time difference. So oftentimes I'm doing it 1 a.m., 2 a.m., and my girlfriend is like, man, just why are you doing this? Go to bed, go to sleep. Tomorrow is a new day, and I'm just putting my family to bed, saying good night, see you in the morning, and I'm driving to the office to do that, and I don't know the answer, so that's why I'm asking from you. Where does this drive come from? Because you can't teach that, I believe.
I hate to say stuff like that is like innate and you're either born with it or you're not, 'cause
Mm-hmm.
I really don't believe that. I mean, it may be true for some people, but yeah, I think by and large it's life circumstances
Mm-hmm.
and, you know, not that I had like any bad trauma or anything in my childhood or anything like that, but there's all these little things you can use as motivation, and like I was an athlete growing up, and I always ask the rhetorical question of, do I hate to lose more than I like to win? And I think for a lot of elite athletes and elite entrepreneurs, I think that is the case. I think the vast majority of us hate to lose so much that
Mm-hmm.
that drive to not want to lose is, again, not that it's innate, but it's this learned thing of this learned hatred, I guess is the best way to put it, of hating to not be on top, hating to lose. And um and I think that's pretty common in all top performers, no matter the field. um and you know I, if someone doesn't have that innate drive, I don't know if I don't know how you get them to that place. But it can be learned. I don't have a good template for it. 'Cause yes, yeah, you either want to be the best or you don't. So that's a great question. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know.
I found one interesting Excel or like a graph of, or statistics of, I think it's one of your locations in 2005. It did like almost 700,000 in revenue, and it said it lost money, and now what's the math? 17 years later, 2022. I don't know the 2023 numbers, but 22 it was 5.9 million, and it said it's a printing press now. And there is an interesting quote: "These are the timelines that create real wealth, and you have to be willing to stomach the pain for long stretches, feeling like a loser."
Yeah, that's one of those quotes where I'll go back and read like, damn, that sounded pretty good. But yeah, I mean that's the reality. Again, going back to being about as anti business bullshit and business influencer as I can possibly be, there really is no get rich quick schemes in life. I mean, yes, people get lucky, but those are the exceptions and not the rule. And the vast majority of all the wealthiest people that I know, whether it's in franchising or any other entrepreneurship walk of life, is they have these really long time horizons. Literally 100% of all of the wealthiest people I know generally did it one way, and that required them, owning either one business or several businesses for literally decades. They're
Mm-hmm.
not they're not in this cycle of trying to flip shit all the time, and yes, you may have to do that in the beginning to get some money to you know do whatever else you want to do, but once you have kind of that little egg, so to speak, to be able to do other things, like that's when you really need to expand your horizons. And coming from a trader, it pains me to say this, but there's a famous study where the accounts that performed the best, and I can't remember if it was Schwab or someone else, but it was there was two types of accounts that outperformed everyone. It was dead people and people that had forgotten their logins, and that just goes to show, like, it's just super long long time horizons are what build really great businesses. And the funny thing is, like in Zaxby's, again, because we're the top performer in the system, people always want to come visit us and see what we're doing and what's so special. And the really funny thing is that whether they would admit it or not, I would say 95% of the people that have come to visit us over the years have left disappointed because they see that there is no secret sauce, that there's nothing proprietary that we're doing. It's just doing 1,000 little things consistently for long periods of time. And that is what separates average performance from top performance, and is just doing all these little things consistently for long periods of time.
But you've said, as you just said, it takes long time to build something, and but I found a post from you which you did in June 17th, 2024, where you shared numbers of your 14 locations.
Right.
And here you say, first time having 4 stores hit 100K in a week, just missed having 5 by $500. But you said all these stores were in the 40 to 50K range not that long ago. So what is the special thing you did, or I mean, that's a massive growth.
They all weren't as slow at growers as the previous example that you referenced. So some of those came out of the gate swinging, and were high performers right off the bat. But the previous example obviously was not, and it's taken 15 years to build up to where it's at now, and to ultimately be the number one store in the system. But there's no magic that created what is now the number one versus some of those other ones. They're all doing those same 1,000 little unsexy things every single day that gets people to come back to our QSRs. And there's just no secrets. It's just putting in your time and just focusing on the things that you can control and not worrying about the things that you can't control. And I think that's why I have always gravitated towards operations, because I know it's this thing that I can put my hands on and control it. Whereas a lot of these other things in the business, I just largely don't have any control over. And so there's no reason to put my mental capital towards it because I can't control it.
So coming back to the operators, I forgot to ask one question. You said that you wouldn't be able to do what you do today if you haven't had this 1 year training in the kitchen. So have all the operators had this 1 year training in the kitchen?
Yeah, I have 5 of my 10 operating partners started with us as either 15, 16, 17-year-old cooks and cashiers. So, I mean, they've quite literally grown up with us, so to speak. That's one of the major benefits. And that's why I was saying earlier, like, the first one's always the hardest because, you have to, in essence, hire from the outside there. And you don't get to see kind of a working resume, so to speak. But that's one of the benefits of setting our business up the way we do, is that, we get to see these really long-term working resumes. And when we get to the point to where we're getting ready to open a new store and looking for a new operating partner, I've generally gotten to work with this person for, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9+ years. And I know exactly what they're good at. I know exactly what they're not good at. I know exactly where they're going to need help. I know exactly where they're going to thrive. And I just need to be a cheerleader. And so that's one of the many benefits of doing it the way that we do it. And then, again, it acts as this really nice internal recruitment mechanism to where, I know if we didn't have this model that some of these guys and gals would have left to go on to do other things for, fairly lateral moves, if that opportunity was not there for them and we didn't talk about it constantly. And so it acts as this, built-in recruitment pipeline to where I never have to go outside of my organization to find new operating partners. And then, again, we hope to do the exact same thing in Sweat House, to where, yes, number one was hard. We went, we hired our first operating partner in Sweat House, made it about 3 months with the first guy, moved on to the next person really quickly, and I'm so grateful we did, because the guy we have now is awesome and has done a fantastic job, and I think he's gonna be a great operating partner. And now we can already see him starting to groom the people beneath him to, hopefully one day for them to have the opportunity that he has. So, again, first one's always the hardest, but once you get the first one under your belt, the rest is honestly pretty easy.
So when it comes to growing the business, the expansion, you've chosen the strategy of owning real estate, and 11 out of 14 locations, you own them. And what has been the reason for choosing this strategy instead of just, I don't know, renting a place? And what is the approach for the future?
I don't want to sit here and tell you like the way that we do it is the right way and the definitive way, because there's definitively plenty of ways to skin the cat. And especially in the private equity world, they, all those people would say we're idiots and crazy for doing it this way. But, the main reasons why we have done that is, again, two partners were real estate guys, and they've just always believed in the, we call it the opco propco setup, to where, in Zaxby's, it's very much two distinct businesses, really. The propco is the real estate part of the business. The opco is the operations part of the business. And if you do it right, the operations company should be paying the mortgage for the property company. And so it's a really beautiful and simple and easy way to build long-term net worth and enterprise value. And again, all of the wealthiest people I know in franchising specifically, this is the way that they've done it, or at least 95% of them, is that they're all major real estate holders, and eventually they either just sell the operations piece of the company and keep all the real estate. And obviously, if you're at least cash flow neutral, you can still, it's still a good business, because the operations is paying the mortgage on the property. And so 15 years go by, and even if you don't make a dime out of the operations in 15 years, you've got a property paid off free and clear. And that's when you really do start to get to that mailbox money piece of this thing. So like, that's at least the initial reasons of why we went down that path. And then I'm not a CPA or a tax expert, but you can get into all the bonus depreciation opportunities and all the tax advantages that come with owning the real estate. It gives you a bunch of flexibility when it comes to, if the operations are struggling, you can adjust the rent down for a little while. If it's doing great, you can raise the rent up. And we just have always liked the kind of the good leverage that piece of the business has provided. If we've generally used 100% debt, but if you just use like a simple example, say you buy a property for $1 million and put $200K down, and 15 years go by, I certainly hope that property is appreciated over the course of 15 years. And let's say the property is worth about $2 million after that, so your $200,000 down payment turned into, about 1.8 million in equity or something like that. Sorry, that's bad math, but you get the point. And again, private equity would never do this, just because their time horizons aren't long enough. But I hope that any business that my family has built, and that I build, and that hopefully my descendants build, we're all just links in this chain. And, that's kind of what I view my role as now as well, is, I'm just a protector and a guardian of this thing that has already been built. And, it's my job to ensure that the next generation um, gets to see it and hopefully expand it and grow it. And so, I'm almost a steward of the business in that sense, is that, my plan has never been to sell or, do anything like that. My plan is just to always hold it for forever and, hopefully let the next generation take over the business. And whether they want to do that or not is not my decision, but that's always the plan. And that's, how we've tried to view everything through. And when you own the real estate, that's so much easier to do. And, again, like even if Zaxby's goes belly up, we've got these 11 properties that can easily be turned into any number of other fast food, QSR, drive-through businesses. And so not that it's a risk mitigation strategy per se, but it just gives you a lot of flexibility that otherwise you would not have. And, I've had the honor and privilege to deal with some crazy landlords over the years, and it's really not fun when you get into some of those piss and matches with them. And it's what has made what little hair I had fall out even faster sometimes. But yeah, that's kind of the why of how and why we've done it. And again, ultimately 95% of all the wealthiest people I know in franchising have done the OpCo, PropCo thing, and they've built the vast majority of their net worth through the real estate side. And the truly crazy thing is, like, if I was to take the OpsCo and sell that off and then do the same thing with the PropCo and sell it off as individual things, even with having the number one store in the system, even with having so many super duper high performing units, my PropCo is still more valuable than my OpCo. And like, that's the thing that I think breaks a lot of people's brains, is that, even with having super high performing units, the real estate is still more valuable.
That leads me to one of the tweets you've done, like in the beginning of last year. The number one reason why people fail in both business and trading, it's undercapitalization. So what have you seen, and what made you to write this tweet? Because this was for some reason on that time you were thinking about this.
Yeah, so I guess the backstory of that is I went broke twice when I was trading full time. And so that was kind of the genesis of that thought, is, just like in anything, I mean, whether it's, trading, business, sports, you name it, you have to have time to weather the inevitable learning curves and the mistakes. And that is very true in business. Like there's so many, I mean, there's people I personally know that, like, had they just been better capitalized and like just gotten to survive one more year, just a little bit longer, like they were good enough operators to where they would have figured it out, but they just ran out of time and they went to zero. And like, that's always, that is the cardinal sin in business and trading, is you just can't go to zero. And, I was lucky to learn that lesson twice the hard way, back when it seemed like a lot of money at the time. It's not a lot of money now, but, it sucked very much going through that, but it taught me so many unbelievable lessons about, just myself and the way that you need to guard against going zero once you do start to have some real assets. That's always the cardinal sin, is you go into a business venture not properly capitalized. Because again, especially if it's your first time, I mean, you're going to screw up, you're going to make mistakes, you're going to cost yourself money. Generally the business is not just going to come out of the gates on fire. and you need time, and time requires money, and there's no substituting for that time to learn the things that you need to learn to be able to be good at. Doesn't matter what you're doing, it just takes time, and time takes money.
So today, 14 locations, lots of people. So what are the biggest problems, biggest challenges you're facing, and what keeps you up in the night today and I don't know, this quarter?
Oh, there would be no shortage of things that keep me up at night if I let it. I mean, I think it's always the people part. You know, I mean, it sounds so cliche, but you know, without having a good team in place, I mean, like I can't do it all on my own. Like it's not physically possible. And so without really strong operating partners and good GMs and AGMs and all the way down the line, and it's especially in my business, which is, admittedly a high turnover business. If you have sub 100% turnover year over year, I mean, that's pretty freaking good in QSR. So the people side is what always scares me. And, I mean, are there other existential risks? I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, there could be like a crazy bird flu and chicken prices, quadruple overnight or, something like that. But as far as like something that is largely in my control, the people piece is, I don't lose a ton of sleep over it, but the rare nights I do, it's usually around people and making tough decisions around people.
And what about the work and life balance? How does it work?
I would say I have gotten better at it over the years. I would still not say I'm a shining example of how and what to do with work-life balance, but I will say, I had this kind of come to Jesus moment where, again, going back to when I was just a single store operator, I was working open into close, like literally just, trying to survive, trying to do everything on my own. And my wife sat me down one night after I'd gotten home from, being at the restaurant for 14 hours and was like, Ben, this is crazy. Like, this is such an unsustainable path, both for your physical body, for your mental well-being, for me, for the kids. We have to make a change. And it was really hard to hear that. And, because I got, it's so easy in business to put these blinders on and just say, I'm just going to work harder. I'll just work harder. That's how I'm going to solve the problems. I'm just going to just keep working harder, work more hours. And that is such an unsustainable path. And, I feel like a lot of people go through that and then they kind of see that this is not sustainable in any shape or form, and I have to learn how to delegate, and I have to learn how to do these things better to find some symbionts and balance in my life. But that conversation and that night, I mean, I still remember it like it was yesterday. And it still took me a while, and I'm still working on it today. But I think I'm in a pretty good place now to where, my office that I'm sitting in right now is less than a mile from my house. I can still go pick the kids up from school. I tuck them in every night, no matter what. It's easier said than done. And again, this was a multi-year process to get to this point. But it's something that I think every single entrepreneur at some point in time in their lives and business life cycle struggles with. And, like some of it too is I've kind of learned like what works for me and what doesn't. And, I would say I'm kind of a sprinter is how I would kind of define my work style, where, when I have something that I want to see get done, or a project I'm working on, or some initiative we're trying to get roll out. I mean, I will go. And then, once that's done, then not that I'm like, going on vacation every 3 weeks or anything like that, but I usually will work in that sprint, and then I'll take, a couple of days to kind of reset, give myself some time and breathing room, because I think that's the other thing that the entrepreneurs, they get in that cycle of not knowing where that balance point is if your head's down and just always in the business, it's really hard to grow the business, because you don't have any time to think, you don't have any time to like really put long-term plans in place, to put new systems and procedures and protocols in place, you know, heaven forbid, hire people and train people and delegate things to people. If you don't have some bandwidth in there to allow yourself time to breathe and think and really figure out where you want this thing to go, I mean, that's where a lot of the balance is almost necessary if you want to keep growing and being successful in business. Otherwise, you're just going to flame out and burn out. And so, again, I'm still not the best example. I still struggle with it. I still work on it every single day. I still have times where I feel guilty about not spending enough time at home. But, it's a constant kind of transformation that I think you work on really your whole life, I think.
One of the specific question when it comes to running the business, I think it comes down to incentivizing people as well, is you've said going to the operating partner model has been the best decision you've made. So how do you describe the operating partner model, and what is the story and lesson behind this?
Yeah, I mean, the gist of it is, I've talked to myself in circles over the years of how to incentivize other human beings to think and act like I would act if it was my restaurant or my sweat house or whatever it may be. And the only way I have ever found to get other human beings to think and act like I would act as the owner is to, in essence, make them an owner. And, like the business case has been established. I mean, like you look at, Chick-fil-A, it's exactly what they do. In-N-Out's exactly what they do. Raising Cane's is exactly what they do. I mean, they're the three shining examples of, at least in my QSR industry, of business excellence. And I mean, they figured it out a long time ago that the only way to have little mini operators in every business is to give them the exact same incentive structure that the owner has. And so that's really the genesis of it. Is, we tried the district manager, area manager thing starting out, and I mean, honestly, probably got lucky that he was such a shitty district manager that he got fired, and so we went back to the drawing board. Was like, we got to figure something else out besides this. And we're like, let's try doing it this way. And so, the basis, they get a salary plus they get 25% of the net operating profits. And, that gives them the exact same skin in the game that we have. And, it's really just boils down to aligning the incentives.
Okay, one of the last topics I'd like to cover is you're pretty active on Twitter. Not that you're roasting there, but you're just sharing your ideas, thoughts, and you very often just simply say things as they are. So, first question: what have been the upside? What have been the downside? Like, have you found new business when doing this, and what about the downside, if any?
Yeah, for me, it's unique because I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not raising money, anything like that. So really, the whole reason why I started getting active on Twitter again was just because I think the initial yearning was, I've got my family, I've got my businesses, and, a lot of times, like, my daily, weekly, monthly interactions very rarely went outside of those bubbles. And so I kind of had this yearning to, connect with other people in my, same kind of life cycle and place in business. And, I don't care what business you're in, but, we all generally struggle with the same stuff. We have the same challenges, and, we all like to share the same war stories. And, I find that it's generally very easy to connect with other entrepreneurs, just because we're all kind of cut from the same mold. You got to be a risk taker. You have to be okay with losing money, which is a very specific skill, believe it or not. We generally all live a very similar type of life. So I would say that was really the main reason why I got back on, and that's been the best part about it is I've made like real like life connections and friends, both people local to Raleigh, North Carolina, and elsewhere, that I would have never otherwise had if it wasn't for Twitter. And I think the coolest part about Twitter, which there's also a downside to it, but the coolest part is that there are some really big hitters out there that have little eggs as their profile picture, and just
Sure.
never tweet, don't post anything. But I mean, there's some really both important people and people that have unbelievable connections, and people that are just wildly successful in so many walks of life that are just out there lurking, and you would never know it. And I think that the thing that really made me realize it was one time I had a friend that I was trying to help him get a role. He had done high level ops stuff, at a bunch of different other franchises, and was looking for a new role. And I was just trying to help him out. So I was like, hey, I got this friend, here's his resume, has managed, 150 plus units before, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, I had literally some of like the biggest franchisees in the world in my DMs in like 30 minutes. And I mean, like that was where like the light bulb really went off. Was I was like, holy shit, like these people not only like follow me, but like they're engaged in the community, whether they're tweeting or not. Like they're watching, they're reading, they're observing these things. And then like sometimes you have these just kind of crazy moments where you get a notification for a new follow, and it's like, I can't believe this person's following me. It's like, whether it's, celebrities or athletes or, you name it. It's just like, and then, like when you get a viral tweet and, 20 million plus people read something I wrote, it just blows my mind every time that, the network effects of Twitter are just, it almost breaks my brain every time it happens, just because it's just like, I can't believe that many people would read something that I wrote. So that's the upside. And then the downside, I would say, is the account grows. Then, of course, like my operating partners follow me now. My wife follows me now. My mama follows me now. I kind of both my franchisors follow me now. My banker follows me now. So that's where a little bit of the downside can come in. Is I do have to kind of watch what I say now, but
Mm-hmm.
again, I think that's also why people follow me, is because they know I'm not full of shit, and I'm gonna shoot them straight, and I'm gonna call like I see it. And I share the wins and I share the losses, and I've shared some unbelievably personal stories on Twitter. And I think that resonates with people. So overall, it's been an unbelievably positive experience. And I still get the haters too, but I think it's just, if you're a real entrepreneur, then it doesn't bother me. And I always enjoy engaging with the haters sometimes too. So it's overall been really good.
Okay, Ben, let's wrap up with quick fire questions. How old are you?
I am 39.
Favorite book?
The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb.
What's the best investment advice you've ever got?
Don't go to zero.
And last one, where can people find you?
Best place would be Twitter at TRUMAV. That was an old trading chat room name, so there's not like a whole lot of meaning behind it. But for sure, Twitter. I do have LinkedIn, but I don't check it very often. So yeah, if you want to connect or find me on Twitter.
Okay. Again, thanks, Ben, for doing this fascinating story. The good part is you have 14 locations. I would be more than happy to do it again a year from now, 2 years from now, and see how things have been going. So let's talk soon, and thanks for the conversation today.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I appreciate it. I'd love to do it again, and hopefully I'll have a lot more sweat houses by then too. Hopefully.